I'm Eric Stach. I am from Duke University, and today we're going to talk about using LabVIEW to do totally legal things online. So the title here is a little bit tongue-in-cheek because when I was describing to my friends at work what I was doing, they all pointed at me and were like, hacker! So hopefully by the end of this, you pick up some tips that will empower your coworkers and friends to point at you and call you a hacker. So first, get started with our giants are female. So I want to highlight one of my colleagues at Duke, Dr. Genevieve Lipp, an assistant professor of the practice in mechanical engineering and electrical engineering. She's taught classes from dynamics, robotics, control systems, which uses LabVIEW, and programming for non-programmers. And as of this fall, she is going to be running the new first-year computing program, which sadly doesn't use LabVIEW. But I think from a mentorship standpoint, and especially like women coming into engineering, like this is great because their first meaningful programming course will be taught by Genevieve, and I think that's a really cool thing. So by the end of the session, you will be able to identify some basic HTTP terminology. You'll learn how to interact with the information on a web page through LabVIEW. You'll learn about a free third-party toolkit that accelerates some web development. You will not become a Java or HTML expert. I am not. That's not the intent of this. But most importantly, you will not become a hacker or malicious internet user. And you must promise me this. OK? All right. So, quick about me. I'm a BSc in mechanical engineering from Duke. I've been Duke with pretty much my whole life. I decided that after graduating, I wanted to go back, but I thought it was best to get paid to be there instead of paying to be there. First, I worked in mechanical engineering in teaching labs. That's how I got started with LabVIEW. Currently, I'm an R&D engineer in a research lab in civil engineering, doing some wireless embedded sensor systems. So I always like to joke that I'm an ME in CEE doing ECE, which just makes absolutely no sense, but it's fun. And quick plug, we have a new user group based in Durham. We've had a couple meetings. There's our logo, it spins. So if there's anyone here who's from the Durham or the Raleigh area and we haven't had a chance to connect, come join us, we'd love to have you. Our next meeting's in August, so I did want to mention that. All right, so a quick background of just sort of the project that I was working on and sort of how I got into this. We had a project that involved something called a network video recorder, or an NVR, and that's a standalone device that controls and stores IP camera feeds. Usually these are used for surveillance cameras, that type of application. It handles the recording, the storage, all of the settings. It's a standalone port, so usually you have a monitor, you have a mouse, so you kind of plug that in and do everything with the device. As the name suggests, there is a network port, so you can look everything on the network, sort of monitor it remotely. We were using an NI DAC to collect some analog measurements, and we had the NVR that was collecting all of our camera stuff. They kind of didn't want to use kind of like the vision stuff. But we would run tests, and every time you would run a test, you would have to start the NI device. You'd have to go over and start the NVR, and the interface required multiple button clicks going through like 3 different menus. So it took me about 2 test trials before I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. So I wanted to just simply improve the setup by integrating the start-stop functionality of the NVR into the rest of our LabVIEW test stand, so it'd be a little bit less cumbersome to run tests, and we'd have to bring less equipment out into the field because we do a lot of field tests. So plan A, it's on the network, so TCP, UDP, let's send some read-write messages. So all right, I'll take a look at this manual and see what we have going on. And there's absolutely nothing in the manual at all that describes how to do this. Try combing through the company's website and seeing what they have, and there's nothing. So I decided to reach out to the company and was like, hey, do you have an API or sort of anything I can go off of? And the company's response was great. They're like, we don't have an API. We're just the vendor. The manufacturer doesn't supply this for security reasons. Security camera, OK, like I can see the rationale there. I asked, can we try asking, who's your manufacturer? Can we figure this out? And they told me they're not allowed to tell me who their manufacturer is, which I thought was kind of interesting. So I replied with a sad face. Moving on to plan B, there's a web client that I can use and just type in the IP address in a web browser and interact with it. So there's a web client that I can use the NVR through web browser. And there's a screenshot of it. So the numbers 1 through 8 all represent a camera. Schedule is the state that it's on. It's recording. Stop, obviously, a stop. So you just change the radio button position, hit the save button, and that triggers some action within the NVR that starts the recording. So what I want to do was see if through LabVIEW I could perform the action of changing the radio button position and then triggering the action that results from pressing save. So talk a little about some basic HTTP terminology here. HTTP stands for the Hypertext Transfer Protocol, and that is kind of simply the application layer used in the internet. You have POST requests, which are request methods for a web server to accept data enclosed in the body of a message. Sometimes it's formatted like an XML. Sometimes it has some other format. Usually there's a body and a header. The header has some like metadata. The body has like the real meat of what you're trying to do. And this is used for uploading, a file, submitting a form, clicking a button, anything that you are doing to send data to a web page. That's a post. There are also GET requests, and that is a request to receive information from the web server. So it's opening a web page. You go open a web page, you made a GET request. And then you define a URL to send this request. And then there's just a Wikipedia page, which I shamelessly took all that information from in case you want to see more. So I determined that I need to make a post request. But I don't know anything about what this message is supposed to look like, what URL. I assume it's probably the URL of the web page. But I kind of need some more information here. So web pages under the hood, I'm sure it's something we've all looked at. If you go right-click on a web page, go to the view page source, or if you hit Control-U, I've accidentally hit it dozens of times. You look at the source code of the web page. It could be JavaScript, HTML, but it'll look something like this. So my first inclination, I know really nothing about web development, so I'm just going to search for terms that I think are relevant, like schedule or stop, and there are no hits, and I can't find anything sort of useful. So I scroll down, and I see a bunch of like JavaScript links at the end, and I see one that's called video control, and I was like, all right, this seems useful. I would imagine this would be in the video control. So let's click on this and let's see what it yields. And it yielded chaos, just an unformatted giant string. So becoming sort of further away of where I'm trying to get, and I'm like, I don't really know what to do with this information. So that's what I said to myself. I don't know what to do with this information. So I'm thinking, should I pack it in at this point? Is it worth it to become an expert on web development just to save myself a few button clicks here? And I decide none of the above, because I just need an insight, and shout out to Norm on his presentation on insights and accelerators last year. I needed an insight that will give me some insight into this, and there's a tool that will allow me to do this. And remember the part where I told you about not being a hacker or malicious internet user? This is going to apply for the next slide. There's a tool called Burp Suite. I'm sure folks have probably heard of it before. So this is an application made by Portswigger for web application security testing. A lot of companies will use it to test the security of their web apps. Some of its users include Amazon, NASA, Barclays. There is a proprietary edition, which has tons of tools. There is a free community edition that has some limited tools. Everything that I was going to use this for is usable for the free edition. And I do want to shout out to Sam for referring me to this tool. This is how I found out about it. So apologies, when the NSA comes for me, they may come for you too. So the tool that ended up being most useful for me was the proxy intercept history. And what this does is this allows you to open a web browser through Burp Suite and intercept the HTTP requests to, among other things, view the get and the post history and the URL. And this is useful because you can learn what's happening under the hood as you're interacting with the websites. And also, it's a really great way to see what third parties are accessing the data on the web page. I was curious and I typed in some websites, and then there were a bunch of like post and get requests from like Facebook, which I was kind of surprised to see. So it's a little bit freaky, but not totally surprising to me. And one thing that I also learned is that sometimes the URL that you make these requests to is the URL, the website that you expect. Sometimes it's a totally different URL, and without this tool, there's really no way to kind of know what that is. This is the interface. I'll do a demo of this a little bit later. But I had hooked up my NVR and hit the stop button and intercepted the post request for that action. So at the top here, I learned how to use Zoom It, which apparently doesn't want to do it on there. Anyway, so at the top we have the URL, which is the IP address / that TDK CGI. I don't know what that means or where that came from, but I would never be able to find that out without this tool. We have, oh no, there we go. The post message header, that just contains some metadata. The post message body, and that's the real meat of what I need to send to the device in order to get this action to trigger. And that includes a lot of information about like what's the action. And then over on the right, you have a response back. And that's useful because you can parse that and check to see whether or not your post was successful or if it was unsuccessful. So that was really convenient. There were just 2 error handles, and I could just see if it was 0 or 1. So using this tool, I was able to gather the information of, all right, I have my URL, I have my message body, and then I can see whether or not it was successful. So what this looks like in LabVIEW is I can run a couple VIs, specifically open session, post, and close session, and I can give it my URL as a string, and I can give it my body as a string, and I can send it, and this code right here is the equivalent of me going in and hitting the stop button. So I could package these VIs up and run them, and then I can integrate this device into my LabVIEW code. Generating a GET request is even easier. You just have to give it a URL, such as the GDevCon NA website, and I can get the source code from the GET request. So this would be the equivalent here is if you went to the website, hit Control-U, and looked at the source code. So this is generating the same thing here. And then ultimately, I was able to develop this API, so take that, anonymous manufacturer, to interface with the NVR. So I have a read, write, prepare, check if the post is successful, and then just created a very simple little tester that I could use to test these functions just to see, make sure everything worked. So now we're going to do a simple demo with Burp Suite. So I've got it open right here. One of the limitations of the free edition is you cannot create a project. Everything has to be temporary. So we will do that. Start up Burp Suite. Take a second to load. And the part that I care about is the proxy. So I will open up a web browser through the interface. And then just to make this a little bit easier to see visually, I'm going to dock this on the left side of the screen. And I have, this is my web browser through Burp Suite. Thank you. So we'll go to the GDevCon NA website. And right now I have the intercept turned off. So as I navigate the web page, it's just going to navigate like normal. But if I turn the intercept on, so now let's go to the sponsor page. I'll click it, and it doesn't do anything right now. I get a little spinny icon. And over here on the left side of the screen, it has intercepted a GET request, and then it has some data associated with that. And now if I forward that, this is a good thing to point out. Sometimes if your web page has a lot of stuff to load, like images or other data, it can take more than one request. So what I found is when I'm just trying to learn what's going on, you may just have to go through and forward a bunch of requests. So now we are on the sponsor web page. They keep loading, so I'll just go ahead and forward all the requests. And now the web page is fully loaded. And if I go to the HTTP history tab, I can look and I can see all of these requests that were made. I can see the URL that made those requests. I'm going to full screen this. And we can show our requests. We can show the responses. And in some cases, depending on what it's been loaded, you can even sort of render that. And that's sort of a nice tool just to sort of help you figure out which of these requests are most relevant to you. So my process was hook up my NVR and turn on the intercept, do what I needed to do, and then capture the request and grab the data off of there. So if we go to this post request, we can see this header, this URL, this data down here, and then a response. So go back to the PowerPoint. All right, demo number 2. There's a theoretical GDevCon NA cookout. Or maybe there is a real one, I don't know. So it's summer, that means everybody's having a cookout. But worse, my inbox is flooded with Google Forms asking me to RSVP and to sign up and say that I'm going to bring some food to this. Frankly, I can't take it anymore, so I'm going to create a LabVIEW tool that can see what other users have signed up for, and then it's going to take a list of things that I like to bake and I like to bring, and then it's going to pick one of those things and then automatically fill out the form for me so that I don't have to do that. So let's exit this. So we have... I've set up this Google form here for the theoretical GDevCon NA cookout. It's a very simple form. What's your name? What are you going to bring? And all of the form responses are collected in this spreadsheet here. So we have a couple, people have signed up already. Emma's bringing brownies. DNAT's signed up to bring cheeseburgers because of course he is. Q's bringing the butter beer. So this might be Harry Potter themed. So Katya, who presented earlier, is bringing the apple pie. So this seems like a pretty well-attended event, and a lot of people have signed up for things. I want to make sure I don't bring any repeats. So let's see if we can sort of automate some stuff here. So I have this LabVIEW application. I have 3 VIs. One is read the Google Sheet responses. So what this is just doing is this is just running a GET request, and it's just parsing the entries and then assembling everything into a 2D array. So let's run this guy. So I now have in my 2D array, the headers and bodies aren't really necessary. I showed those just for demonstration purposes. But here, can I use, there we go. So now I have all of the entries in that Google Sheet loaded up into a 2D array that I can use for later. I have another VI that is going to write. So just a simple post request, and then a very simple check that if somewhere in that post request it says the response has been recorded, then I know it was successful. So putting this all together, I have my automated Google form tool. So it just has my name, and it has a list of things that I like to bake. I'm really into baking, so here's various list of things. So it's going to check that list and see if anything in there, anything in my list is already in there. And then from the remaining things, it's just going to pick something at random and then fill out the form. So let's run this. That's pretty boring. Cake is all right, but so we see here it filled out this entry just now, signed me up to bring cake. I'm going to run it again, see if I can get something a little more exciting. The Prince Forgetting Tour. I'm very happy to bring that. If you don't know what that is, it's a massive 7-layer cake. It was featured in the Great British Bake Off 2 seasons ago. Took me like 5 hours to bake. It's awesome. Using this tool, using some of the LabVIEW functions, I was able to read the data off the spreadsheet and then fill it out and send some data to the spreadsheet. So it's sort of a nice, added feature you can add into some of your VIs. So I'm going to finish up with 2 slides here, and then I'll be done. So HTTP and LabVIEW, you have a couple options. LabVIEW does ship with HTTP functions in the connectivity protocols palette. Don't use those. Instead, I like the NI Advanced HTTP client HPI. DNAT contributed, so it will be readable. And it actually says in the release notes that this is intended to be a replacement for the built-in HTTP client. It's really easy to use. It's simple. And it was pretty effective. So that's the toolkit I used. There may be some other ones out there, like third-party ones, but this is just kind of the one I settled on. And then the last thing, web security. This slide included so that Eric Reffett, who talked about security last year, doesn't leave with his head in his hands. Yay. So with enough time and energy, anything can be hacked. So it's impossible to just, get it 100% foolproof, but we can remove low-hanging fruit. If you're going to be doing, messages of this style, like don't store your passwords in VIs. That's a really simple thing we can do. I don't know if you noticed, but in my messages there was a thing for password and username, and I just kind of had it all in there. So if your messages contain password information, remove that. Separate the lock from the key. For my application, I would keep the message templates like in a database, but I would remove the password and have some key that just got substituted in at the last minute. If you can encrypt it, that's great. But I kind of did that way, figuring that unless you had the password, you couldn't do much with the template. This was not really online. It was all just locally connected stuff. But I still wanted to try to do something to consider that. All right, so use your newfound web skills wisely. Hacking, that's bad. Don't do it. Malicious and reckless internet behavior, bad. Don't do it. But automating some boring stuff or adding some dynamic update capabilities from web or LAN sources to your LabVIEW application, that's pretty good. So you can add that a little bit of flair to your VI. And if you want to learn some more, here are some cool videos. Derek did a great video. LabVIEW NTS did a great video. And then there's the link to the toolkit. Sorry, I don't have any QR codes, but that's pretty easy to find by Googling. So thanks for having me. It's been great. And if the NSA asks, this presentation never happened.